Hey, what's up guys? Alex here, back again for another video today. And again, it's been a while since I've made a video. I know I say that every time I come on camera nowadays, but yeah, it's been a while. So today I wanted to go back to doing vinyl updates and show you guys everything that I've picked up since probably December or January. I can't remember the last time I did a vinyl update, but I think the last time I did one, I didn't have everything that I had to show because most of it was here at uni with me in Oxford, and I was back home for Christmas. So yeah, I got a lot of stuff here that's quite old now. I've had for probably over 5-6 months or so. And again, I really haven't been buying very much vinyl. Even going back to last year, I wasn't buying much vinyl, and this year has just not really been much of a change. I've tried to buy things when when I've had a bit of spare money and there's something I've wanted, I've put it towards that. But I skipped the whole record store day thing this year, which is the first time. Well, I didn't completely skip it. I have one record from record store day to show, but I skipped the whole kind of ritual of going to the store, early on record store day and lining up and making a list and all that kind of thing. I didn't do any of that stuff this year because I don't know. I actually did. I did plan on going, and I did leave the house very early on record store day with no list or anything, no intentions or plans on what I wanted to pick up. But yeah, I saw that the line was already very long by the time I got there. It was like 8:30 or something, and I think I queued up for like 5 minutes or so, and then just decided that I didn't have the time or didn't really care enough to be queuing for a few hours to get into the store when I didn't even have like a list of things that I wanted to look for. So I pretty much skipped the whole record store day on the day, but I went back a couple of days later and they had a whole bunch of new stock in, which I think they had like some leftover stock which was sent to the store a bit later, and I managed to get the one thing which I would have been first on my list anyway. I managed to pick up a couple of days later. So yeah, I kind of half participated this year in record store day, but yeah, overall just haven't really been buying much vinyl. But considering it's been probably half a year since I've shown some vinyl, I do have probably 10 to 12 records to show today. So without further ado, I'm going to crack into this vinyl update. Okay, so I'm going to start with an older record, an old second-hand record, which I can't believe I haven't shown yet because I've had this now for probably 6 or 7 months. But yeah, I was so happy to find this. I can't actually remember where I got this. I think it was my record store just down the road in Oxford, but I could be wrong. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, this is Mike Bloomfield, Al Kooper and Steve Stills, and this is their album Super Session that they did together. This is from 1968, and this is a stereo copy, as you can see. I'm sure many VC members will be familiar with this album. I wasn't familiar with it before I picked it up, but I'm a big fan, obviously, of Mike Bloomfield and Al Kooper, both of whom worked on Bob Dylan's albums from the mid-60s. Well, they definitely worked on Highway 61. Al Kooper was the organ player on Highway 61 Revisited, and Bloomfield played guitar for Dylan at Newport, and I think he played on Highway 61 as well. So I'm a big fan of those two guys. Obviously Steve Stills I know a little bit less about, but again I'm a big fan of his as well. And this is a great album. I was so surprised how much I dug this. This came out in '68, and it's just basically these three jamming out for about an hour, and they just play some kind of old blues standards and flesh them out a bit with some great electric guitar and some really soulful vocals as well. So yeah, big fan of this album. If you haven't heard it and you're a fan of blues or any kind of guitar music from the '60s, Bloomfield and Kooper and Steve Stills, all great guitarists. So check this out. That's first record. Moving on, I'll show my record store day release now. So this, again, yeah, as I say, this is the only record store day release I picked up this year. I picked it up a couple of days after the actual day, and I was so surprised that this was in there because I thought this would be one of the items that sold out immediately. So I imagine what happened is they got the stock in after the day, which is what sometimes happens when they have some stock left over, they redistribute it to all the stores. So I managed to get a copy of Run the Jewels. This is their EP called Bust No Moves, exclusive Record Store Day release. And as you can see, the artwork is really cool. They've done a really creative job with this packaging. And I did think, when I saw the picture, I thought these two fists here were actually ingrained into the vinyl, printed on the vinyl. But I don't, well, that's definitely not the case. It's just a clear vinyl pressing. If you pull it out, you've just got some really cool labels with the rope there, or wire, whatever it is. And I thought a really nice touch was the captions on the labels, which are this side and that side instead of numbers 1 and 2, which I thought was really cool. And it's got some kind of streaks in there as well, some color streaks, a little bit like the Liars release that I picked up on Record Store Day last year. And yeah, the fists are just on the artwork behind. So really cool, really happy to have this. Massive fan of Run the Jewels. As you guys know, I put their album from last year, Run the Jewels 2, as my favourite from last year, my favourite album of last year. So massive fan of theirs, and this is one thing I really wanted to get above all else. So I'm very happy to have it. Got the tracks Bust No Moves, which is a new one, not on the album. Pew Pew Pew. Love Again, which was on Run the Jewels 2. And Blockbuster Night Part 2, which is a follow-up to the first part on the album. So yeah, really happy to have this. Okay, moving on to another new release now. Well, relatively new. This came out last year. An album this time, and this is something I picked up a couple of months ago. If you guys watched mine and Brandon's top 10 albums of 2014 video, which I put up at the end of last year, this was very high up on Brandon's list. I can't remember. I don't think it quite made my top 10, or maybe it did. I think this was Brandon's number 1, and I think it was 6 or 7 on my list. So we both really love this album, and he bought the vinyl way before me because he's a hardcore fan. And I'm very new to this artist, so I didn't pick up the vinyl immediately, but a couple of months ago I went into my store and I couldn't resist buying DAngelo's, or DAngelo and the Vanguard's new album, their most recent album, Black Messiah, which, as I say, yeah, came out last year. Towards the end of last year, it was one of those late releases that surprised everybody because he hadn't put out an album in 12 years, I think it was, or 14 years since, was it Brown Sugar? No, Voodoo from 2000. So, yeah, this is an amazing album, you know, kind of R&B fused with soul, funk, you know, there's so many different genres kind of fused together on this album, and yeah, the pressing is outstanding as well. You've got a really nice gatefold there with a picture and a nice quote there, and track listing on the back. Really heavyweight vinyl as well, which is always nice. And yeah, this album is just mind-blowingly good. I can't say enough about this. I'm so glad that Brandon, shout out to you, Brandon, for, again, recommending DAngelo to me and making me listen to this album after I probably refused to a few times. You insisted, and I'm so glad I checked it out because this is by far one of my favourite albums of 2014, so check it out if you haven't already. So I'm going to carry on with my new records. Obviously I've got some new stuff and some second-hand stuff, but I'll carry on with the new stuff considering I'm already showing newer records. So next up we have Snoop Dogg with Doggy Style. Obviously this is a hip-hop album which came out in 1993 originally. This is obviously a reissue. But yeah, any hip-hop heads out there, I'm sure you guys are aware of this album. It's considered to be kind of an early classic of the genre. This came out in 93. And obviously that was kind of a golden age for hip-hop. If you go back to the early 90s, early to mid-90s, so many classic albums were being released around that time in the genre. Albums like Illmatic, Ready to Die, The Chronic, Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, you know, so many albums that you would probably think of before thinking of this one. So it's kind of overlooked by many people, I think, or I imagine, when thinking about those other albums. But this really is, in my opinion, the only masterpiece that Snoop Dogg has ever released. It's definitely by far his best album. And if you're just looking for some straight up hedonistic, stereotypical hip hop, talking about girls, drugs, living the good life, you know, this is your album, because it just celebrates those things in such a unique and funny and witty way. And you know, Snoop Dogg's definitely spitting on here. It's not like he's not addressing, well, he's not really addressing serious issues, but he's definitely doing, you know, the lighter subjects like drugs and women and all that stereotypical stuff that you might associate with hip hop of that time. You know, he's doing that in a very clever and witty way, I find. So yeah, this is an amazing album. As I say, if you're looking for that kind of hip hop, then this, you can't really do much better than Doggy Style. By far his best album, and the production on here as well is just mind-blowingly good. Obviously the executive producer was Suge Knight, and but the majority of the album was produced by Dr. Dre, who was obviously at the kind of peak of his powers at that time, with The Chronic and NWA and stuff. So yeah, great album. This is a reissue, which I'm not sure when it came out, but sounds very good on my turntable. The bass lines on here sound amazing, and yeah, really happy to have this. So check it out. Okay, next album, or I'll show this one next. This is one which Brandon actually sent me. Again, another shout out to Brandon. Seem to do that in every video. But yeah, he sent this to me a long time ago now. I think it was back in February. He just said, you know what, I'm going to buy you a record. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to turn it down. And had to wait a little while for it. It took a few weeks to come. But I really appreciate you doing this for me, Brandon. Sent me a copy of A Tribe Called Quest. This is Midnight Marauders. So yeah, thank you very much for sending this to me. Obviously you know that I'm a big hip-hop fan and a big Tribe Called Quest fan. This is, I think, their third album, but don't quote me on that because they might have put out more than 2 albums before this. But obviously this was the follow-up to A Low End Theory, which many people consider to be their masterpiece, their best album. I would say that that's debatable. I mean, they're very, I wouldn't say they're similar albums. There's definitely differences between them, but you know, obviously with the cover art and the themes on here and the time periods, they are quite similar, and you know, they're definitely comparable in terms of quality. I like both albums, you know, immensely. I would say this one, Midnight Marauders, probably has the slight edge over A Low End Theory for me. Especially after receiving the vinyl and listening to it a few times. This is just amazing stuff. You know, really jazzy, high-tempo hip-hop with some amazing lyrics, some great spitting from all the MCs on here. And yeah, this is just a flawless album. So again, another hip-hop classic that if you're into hip-hop now and you haven't heard any older hip-hop, then this is definitely one to go back to and check out. It's mind-blowingly good. So yeah, thank you very much, Brandon, for sending this to me, and I will be sending you something back shortly. So carrying on in the vein of hip-hop, which obviously is featuring pretty heavily in this video, what can I say, I'm just a big fan of hip-hop, especially at the moment. And yeah, this next album is by one of my favorite trios in all of music. You know, currently working today, these guys are just, you know, kind of ahead of the curve in so many ways. Many people think that they've announced that they've broken up now, which is very sad, but you know, who knows with these guys, they're probably just trolling all of us, and they'll probably be back sooner than we think. But yeah, I'm so glad to have picked up a copy of their newest album. This is The Powers That Be by Death Grips. Obviously I've shown The Money Store before in previous vinyl updates, which is still my favourite album of theirs. came out in 2012, and that album is just flawless to me, mind-blowing. This is obviously their most recent effort. This is a two-part album, half of which came out in 2014 and half of which came out about a month ago, or a couple of months ago now, can't remember exactly. But they compiled both the albums and put them on one vinyl release. This is the first part here, which I'm not going to say the name of, but you can see it. And the second part, this side, is called Jenny Death, which was probably one of the most widely anticipated albums of all time. I've never known hype quite like the hype that went along with Jenny Death. And nobody knew when they were going to put it out. They were hinting at putting it out last year, and then they delayed it, and then there were all these hints. They put out an album early in the year with a load of hints on it, and still nobody knew when it was going to come out, and eventually they dropped it a couple of months ago. But yeah, this is an amazing two-part album. I would say Behind the Money Store, this album is my second favourite. The first part, which name I can't really say, is both the parts are very different. The first part is much more unusual, I would say. It's basically based on a load of Bjork samples, which Death Grips took and used in wacky and wonderful ways. And basically MC Ryder's just rapping over these Bjork samples mixed in with obviously Flatlander and Zach Hill's instrumentation. And it's a great album. It kind of ebbs and flows. There's some really amazing tracks on there, and there's some that are just really weird and really kind of hard to listen to at times. Jenny Death, I find, is a much more, I don't want to say consistent, because Death Grips they're never going to be consistent on an album, but it's much more solid in that every track is really enjoyable to me, and it's just really hard hitting from start to finish. And I can't really say much else, say much more about it. I mean, it's just something you have to hear to kind of understand. And, all credit to Death Grips for doing something so ambitious. And even though I don't really understand the kind of two-part album thing, because these albums, or the two parts, don't seem to really complement each other in any way, I think it would have been maybe better if they'd put out each part individually. But, who am I to argue with Death Grips? They definitely do their own thing and don't play by any rules. So yeah, this is a really cool pressing. I had to pay quite a lot for this, but I didn't mind, because it might be their last album, and they're definitely a trio whose discography I want to kind of complete on vinyl. I want to have all their records on vinyl one day, so had to pick it up. So that's that's Death Grips, The Powers That Be. So I'm at 18 minutes and I still have 6 records to get through, so I'm going to whiz through these a bit quicker than the ones that I've just shown. So getting into the last couple of new records, this is one that I'm really happy to have. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of this band, this was still really great to get. I got a copy of Stornoway. This is Bonoxy, I think that's how you say it, Bonoxy. And as you can see, it's signed personally to me, to Alex, with all the band signatures on there. And I said that I wasn't the biggest fan of this band, so basically my dad went to see these guys live. They're playing a set back in my hometown where my dad lives, and he's going through this period in his life. He's never been the biggest music fan, but he's going through this period where he's kind of reinventing himself a little bit, I guess. Midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it. And he's discovering all this new music, and he's really into Stornoway. He went to see them live and picked up the record for me. This is, it's great music. I mean, it's good music, should I say. It's kind of folk rocky, and the kind of theme and concept of this album, I think, is birds and nature. It's got some great kind of nature sounds on it, soundscapes, which are really cool. But yeah, not the biggest fan of the band. I find the music a little bit safe for my taste, a little bit, I don't know, a little bit easy to listen to. It's a bit easy listening type of stuff for me, but you know, I like it. I can definitely put it on and appreciate some of the songs on here. I definitely like some of the songs a lot more than others. But so far I've only listened to this through about twice, I think, so I couldn't really pinpoint which songs I like. Really, really good pressing, great picture there on the gatefold, and obviously it's great to have the band sign it as well. So thank you very much, Dad, for picking this up for me. And yeah, if you're into kind of folk rock, definitely check these guys out, because they definitely have, you know, something to offer. Definitely something to offer. Alright, moving on to the final new record of this final update. And this is by my favourite artist of all time. I presume you guys know who that is by now. Of course, I couldn't miss out on this. I picked up the new Bob Dylan album. This is Shadows in the Night, which I think came out this year. Yeah, I think it came out at the start of 2015, February or something. And basically this is an album full of Frank Sinatra covers, as far as I know. It's produced by Jack Frost, and basically, yeah, it's just Dylan covering these old Frank Sinatra standards that he recorded back in the 50s and 60s. I think, well, it might have even been the 40s. And, you know, Dylan's just bringing his own style, bringing his own flavour to these songs, giving them a bit of a rejuvenation, I guess, in his old croaky voice. And by the way, happy birthday, Bob, for the other day. I think he turned 74, was it? Or 73? I think it's 74 a few days ago, so happy birthday. Yeah, I enjoy this album. I think it's a very solid release from Dylan. Obviously, he's coming towards the kind of twilight of his career now. Who knows, he might go on for another 10, 15 years making albums, but I can't personally see that happening. So I imagine this is one of his final albums, and I think he's definitely earned the right now to kind of do what he wants with music. And, you know, just be free to explore other artists' catalogues and different genres and various things. So, yeah, this is very solid, and I respect Dylan for doing this. Obviously, it's bizarre to hear, you know, one of the greatest, if not the greatest songwriter of all time covering another artist. Kind of weird to hear that happen, but yeah, I really enjoy this album. And a few standout tracks. The Night We Called It a Day is an amazing track, and there was a video that went along with that song, because obviously it was released as a single, and then Dylan also did a music video for that, which is an amazing video. If you guys haven't seen it, if I remember, I'll put it in the description. But yeah, just a video full of narrative and surprises, and it's just typical Dylan, so check it out. I'm a Fool to Want You's a good song, Autumn Leaves, Some Enchanted Evening. You know, they're just really solid songs on here, but nothing mind-blowing, nothing spectacular, but you know, gotta get it because it's Bob Dylan, of course. So that's the final new records. Moving on to the last few second-hand finds. I'll show these two now, and I'll get through these very quickly. This is by one of my favourite artists of all time again. Pretty controversial artist, I guess you could say. Not many people in the VC, well, I think that not a lot of people in the VC respect this guy too much. I can understand why, I guess, but I think if you look at his music objectively, then you will soon realise that he is a very talented guy and one of the best musicians working today, in my opinion. So I picked up a couple of 12-inch singles from Kanye West. The first one is Through the Wire, which is one of his early songs from his first album, The College Dropout, which you can see down there. Through the Wire is an amazing song, one of my favourite songs on The College Dropout. Basically, the story behind it is that Kanye, back in 2003, got into a pretty serious accident. I think it was a car accident, but I'm not sure. And basically he was really injured and had to wear this mouth brace, this jaw brace, for a few months, and he basically rapped through the brace, even though he could barely talk through this thing. He thought it'd be a cool idea to make a song, you know, with the brace on, and it works. It comes off so well. It doesn't come off as kind of pretentious or anything. It comes off as really well executed, and the beat on this song is so good. One of Kanye's best beats on here. So amazing song. You've got the main version, the album version, and also Two Words, which is another song from the album on the B-side. So that's the first single. And to go along with that, we also have another single from Kanye, Sold to Me by the same vendor. This one is from his second album. This song is Diamonds from Sierra Leone, which, as I say, comes off his second album, which was Late Registration from 2005. And this would have to be probably top 5 if I was to compile a list of top Kanye songs. This would definitely make it into the top 10 or top 5. Incredible song, amazing beat on here. You know, just a masterful beat. Kanye is definitely one of the best producers. Even if you don't like the way he raps or you hate his personality or whatever, I don't think anybody can listen to his music and seriously say that he's not a great producer. And Diamonds from Sierra Leone is just a great example of Kanye killing the beat and killing the instrumental, and also killing the lyrics. I mean, this is one of his best songs lyrically as well, in my opinion. So on here you've got the album version, the instrumental, and then on the B-side you have a remix of Jesus Walks from his first album and the New Workout Plan remix as well. So yeah, nice little pair of 12-inch singles. It's actually my first Kanye vinyl that I own. Some of his stuff's really hard to pick up on vinyl and costs a bomb, and some of his earlier pressings I've heard don't sound the best, so I've kind of held off on those a little bit. But yeah, Kanye is one of my favourite artists of all time, so eventually I will pick up some of my favourite albums of his. But just cool to have a couple of singles. Okay, moving on to the last two here, the last three. Next up we have, quite simply, one of my favourite albums of all time. So happy to finally have this. So many times I wanted to pick this up and just didn't have the money, or didn't have, you know, I always thought I could find a better copy or something, but I finally bit the bullet and bought a copy of Animals by Pink Floyd, of course, from 1977. This is an absolute masterpiece, in my opinion. You know, Pink Floyd, they really kind of went against the grain at that time. You know, it's 1977. Music was starting to move into the direction of punk and I guess new wave. Bands like the Talking Heads coming in and stuff like that. Pink Floyd didn't really go along with the trend. They stuck to their kind of early 70s roots and their prog rock roots, and put out an incredible album. In my opinion, this is up there with Dark Side of the Moon as being my favourite 2 albums of theirs. Classic album cover there, of course, with the pig floating above Battersea Power Station. And I got this at a record fair. There's this kind of rotating record fair that travels around the kind of southwest and southeast of England, and they come to Oxford, I think, once a month or something. And this was only the second time I've been, and I find most of the stuff seems to be very overpriced, and that was the case this time. There were so many things that I wanted, but they were all completely out of my price range. And I know you're supposed to barter and get prices down and stuff, but I did manage to get the price down on this, which was the only item I picked up. This was originally £15, marked at £15. I got it down to 10, which I thought was an exceptional price, really, for a copy of Animals, because it's quite rare to find an original copy of Animals. I think this is a Canadian, first Canadian pressing of this. So obviously it's not a UK original, which probably would have been preferable for me, but I'm happy enough with the Canadian pressing, and it's in really good condition as well, so can't complain one bit. And you know, I'm just so happy to finally have this on vinyl. So Pink Floyd, Animals. I mean, talk a little bit about the music. I mean, it's Pink Floyd, so you kind of know what you're going to get, but this is a much kind of rougher, more underground sounding recording by Pink Floyd if you compare it to some of the more refined recordings on Dark Side of the Moon or Wish You Were Here. This definitely sounds a bit darker, a bit grittier, and they were obviously going for that kind of lo-fi sound in a way. But I think it really adds to the atmosphere and the kind of dark mood of this album. And you know, it's just amazing. It just ceases to amaze me how good this is every time I play it, and it's always going to be one of my favorites of theirs, for sure. So yeah, definitely stoked to have this. Next up, we have another album which I'm so happy to finally have, by another one of my favourite bands. Picked this up in my record store for a really good price. I think it was, yeah, it's £10. So really happy to finally have a copy of Music from Big Pink, of course, by the band. Always been a big fan of the band. I love their first two albums. This one, which came out in '68, I think. Yeah, 1968. And then their self-titled album, which came out in '69. Both, to me, are just masterpieces. And this would probably just about have the edge over their self-titled album if I was to rank them. But yeah, got this for a good price. It's a reissue, I think, from the 70s or 80s. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for something, some kind of deep-rooted Americana, folk-inspired at times, but really electric and high-tempo, with an amazing vocalist. I mean, Levon Helm, I guess you could see him as kind of a polarizing figure and a polarizing vocalist. He probably won't be to everybody's taste, but I really enjoy his style of singing, and you know, he really complements the backing band on here with Robbie Robertson, you know, Garth Hudson, Rick Danko, you know, all those guys put in amazing performances on here, and yeah, so happy to have a copy of this for the first time. So not sure, yeah, as I said, I'm not sure when this was pressed. You've got a green light tab up there, green light priced right, which I'm not sure if that's a label or not. I know this was originally released on Capitol, but yeah, I'll be looking for an upgrade copy at some point in the future, but for now, this is definitely good enough as a playing copy. So yeah, that's Music from Big Pink by the band. And last but by no means least, we have another album from Mr. Bob Dylan. This one's a bit more classic, this one's a bit more essential for my collection, to be quite honest, and it's one that I literally can't believe I waited this long to find a copy of this. It's always just been the same old thing, like I've seen a copy, it's either been too expensive or in bad condition. And I know I could have gone on Discogs, but it just didn't, I don't know, for whatever reason I couldn't be bothered, and I was just waiting for a nice copy to turn up in a store, and finally came across actually two copies of this in the store at the same time. Both were similar, comparable in terms of condition, both copies in mono, and of course this is Bob Dylan's seminal masterpiece, one of his masterpieces from 1965, Bring It All Back Home. Not going to talk too much about this album because I will be doing a review of this very shortly for my channel. I've obviously been doing a Bob Dylan chronological album review series, which I know has kind of got lost somewhere. I haven't done one in quite some time, probably like a year now. Something's ridiculous, it's been so long. But a couple of people have been asking me about when I'll be doing the review for this, and it will be coming up shortly, so stay tuned for that in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, so happy to finally have a copy of this, and it's a mono copy as well, which is obviously a bit of a bonus because that's the original format, that's the way Dylan wanted people to hear his songs. So it's great to have, this is a UK mono pressing, as you can see there, the little CBS stamp with the mono, and yeah, it's in good condition. It's not in perfect immaculate condition. You've got some creases in the sleeve and a couple of scratches on the vinyl, but you know, I can't complain, and I got this for, I think it was £10, so I thought that was a very good price considering what I've seen these go for in the past. And it's on obviously the Orange Columbia label, Orange CBS label should I say. So yeah, I'm 90% sure this is a UK original, but I might be wrong. I'm not an expert on that kind of thing. But yeah, I will have a review of this up shortly, so stay tuned for that. Those of you that have been asking, and yeah, it's one of my favourite albums of all time. So you know, expect a pretty positive review of this. But yeah, this is the final record of the vinyl update. So that's all I have to show in this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you've made it to this point, I know I've waffled on for far too long yet again, but yeah, hopefully there were some records there that were of interest for some of you guys. Be sure to leave a comment if you have any comments on the records that I've shown or have any questions for me, and I'll be sure to reply to them. But yeah, I do have a bit of free time at the moment. I've well, not graduated, but I finished uni. I graduate in a couple of weeks, which is pretty exciting. But obviously I don't have any more academic endeavours to take my time away, so I do have a bit of a window now between uni and getting a job where I can possibly make a few videos. So yeah, I'll obviously have that review up hopefully very shortly. And I also kind of want to put together a little like montage video of some concerts that I've been to recently. I've been to about three shows in the last month, and I filmed some cool footage from each of them. So I might, you know, put together a little compilation video of those shows. But I have to wait and see. But anyway, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you guys are all doing well. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.